Welcome back to Truth to Tell. Michelle is away today. I'm Andy Driscoll. It's Labor Day, last day of the fair. We're here on Truth to Tell this morning, and we're going to be talking about something else. We're going to be talking about the Viking Stadium and the case. While the state and stadium authority wrangle with the Wilf family over the latter's personal and business finances before it approves a Viking Stadium, a mayoral candidate is asking a Hennepin County District Court jury to order enforcement of a city charter provision that many of us remember being passed. I think it was almost 2-1 when they passed that, wasn't it, Doug?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was not one of those close votes or anything. In any event, that vote would require a public referendum on any proposed city expenditure of $10 million or more on private entities. And we've been awaiting a ruling from the jury. You haven't gotten it yet, right?
Or from the judge. I haven't.
From the judge.
Yeah, I haven't gotten. There's no jury involved. But
there is no jury after all.
No,
I thought you said there was a jury. I thought you corrected me there. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was saying the jury. Actually, the judge is out on this issue yet.
Okay, so it's the judge who's taken it under advisement. Okay, I was wondering about that. I hadn't heard anything about it.
Right. So I'm kind of expecting something to happen soon. The judge did not issue a self-imposed deadline on making a decision. So.
Well, I could go through a lot of this history. The city has committed $309 million to this project, which I guess it's almost $1 billion, isn't it? 900 and when it's all said and done, it's going to be over $1 billion.
It comes close to that, yeah.
It cannot. It's supposed to be that they cannot pay this out without a public referendum. And by the way, I'm looking into a camera as we talk, and I should remind everybody that we're broadcasting live on livestream.com/truth-to-tell-mn, and you can watch us live online. Or you can listen online, of course, at kfai.org. Anyway, for those of you who want to see our ugly mugs up here, you're welcome to tune into livestream.com/truth-to-tell-min. On this great Labor Day, well, in any event, this whole business of that court case essentially contravenes a specific legislative override of that charter provision, the city charter provision requiring a public referendum. And so obviously the many interests it takes to cut a deal in this state or almost anywhere, or in the towns around here, are hardly in his camp, and Mr. Doug Mann's camp, because he actually wants the law enforced, and the law may actually be muddier than it is clear on whether the state can simply dismiss a voter-approved home rule provision, controlling city expenditures on private investment like stadiums for billionaires, et cetera, et cetera. So one thing is true, the more one examines these frustrating manipulations of the public trough to the enrichment of shady sports team owners, if the public's money may actually guarantee a significant living wage, union negotiated job for whole messes of workers at various levels, there may be some proportionality that ought to be acceptable to most opponents of publicly financed stadiums, or stadia, if you prefer. Anyway, we can talk about this lawsuit and the other aspects of this particular stadium project, especially the nasty things being said about those lovable boys from out east, Ziggy and the rest of the Wilf clan. Sports is often guy talk, but I guess today that is a bit of accident. We're all guys here today. Doug Mann is the mayoral candidate I speak of, and he's suing the city. Who knows what else? I don't know. Who are the other defendants? Any others?
No, it's just the city.
And you're representing yourself.
And I'm representing myself.
Are you a lawyer?
No, I'm not a lawyer.
Okay.
And I've checked online for advice on what to do to when you're filing an extraordinary writ, and they all say get a lawyer.
And but you also have to have dollars to do that, right?
To get a lawyer, that makes it almost inaccessible. I mean, a project like this would conceivably be upwards of $10,000 in legal fees.
At least that.
When I've tried to file the same lawsuit that Doug filed. I tried last year and I was very unsuccessful, and they rejected my lawsuit. And Doug is a little sharper than I am, I think, and was able to get the county clerk to accept it. But I was told that by lawyers that they would handle this case for anywhere between $60,000 and $100,000. That's how much they wanted to charge to do this kind of a law, which is that's way out of the range.
It's insane. It's insane. But the voice you're hearing, by the way, is that of Eddie Felien. Ed Felien is the editor publisher of Southside Pride and formerly of Pulse magazine, which is our news magazine, I guess it was. Newspaper. Weekly news.
For 10 years, weekly alternative paper.
Well, I wrote for you. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Anyway, and then before we go any further, I want to be sure that Wade Luneburg is represented on the on this. He's a Ryback appointed member of the Stadium Implementation Committee, the People's Stadium Implementation Committee. Yes. He's also Secretary Treasurer of Unite Here, HERE, Local 17. It's the Hospitality Workers Union here in the Twin Cities. And he joins us by phone somewhere out there in green country. Wade, welcome to TTT.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me on Labor Day. It's always good to talk about great and good potential jobs moving forward. And I want to assure everybody I am not an attorney either.
Okay, so we won't ask you for legal advice in any event.
Please don't.
All right. But we all speculate legally. I always pretend that I'm a lawyer when I'm talking about legal stuff. I've got a lawyer brother who says, Andy, stop that. Stop trying to be a lawyer. Anyway, before we move on, give us a call with your questions and comments about the city's participation in funding the Viking Stadium or on Mr. Mann's lawsuit challenging the override of the city charter amendment and requirement to hold a referendum on planned public expenditures of $10 million or more. 612-341-0980. 612-341-0980. Or you can tweet us at TTT Andy Driscoll. I guess we're monitoring that, are we, Mark? We looking at we're not looking at Twitter? Are you looking at Twitter, Craig?
Every now and then.
Every now and then he's looking at Twitter, so you can try there. Or you can post comments on our Facebook page at facebook.com/truth-to-tell. I'll try to sort of keep an eye on that as we go along. I'm not very good at multitasking when it comes to talking and then checking my my computer here all the time. But you can at least post comments up there, and then we'll get something going. But in the meantime, the best thing to do is call us at 612-341-0980. Okay, Doug Mann. So where do things stand as of this morning on your lawsuit? Talk about why you went solo on this thing, like without a big crowd behind you somehow. Or maybe there's a bigger crowd that we don't.
Well, I don't know. I think part of the problem is folks think that this is a done deal and there's no way to really effectively fight it, so why bother?
I'm sure that's true.
Now the city attorney has advanced a couple of arguments. One that the state the stadium legislation has a financing mechanism that makes the charter provision that requires a referendum not applicable, and that's pretty weak because the city wouldn't be what the stadium legislation does is assigns local taxes to the state, which in theory makes them not local taxes, right?
Oh, really?
But you know, if the city is not in a if the city is in a position to reassign local taxes to the state, then it's reasonable to say that, you know, that those belong to the city in the first place.
Well,
The city is in a position to, you know, to reassign taxes that don't belong to them.
Right, and
And-
also, Doug, I think it's also important to note that if the city isn't able to collect enough in sales tax to pay what it owes for the stadium, either for the construction or for the to pay off the bonds for the construction or for the maintenance, then that money's going to have to come out of the general fund. So the city's on the hook for this money.
I forgot to say that you used to be a city council member.
You were one of my former sins.
Yes, okay, so you do really know about the city finance stuff a
Well,
little bit.
I know something about it, but I mean, not much more than what anybody else knows. Is that the money comes into the city has to make up for it if it doesn't come in, and it has to pay it out if it does. But I mean, it's city money, and it's just
I mean, you can call it what you want it, but if the city owns the money, and it's going to expend that money, one would think that it has to abide by its own laws,
right.
let alone any other laws.
Really, and at one point, the legislation says, in the absolute height of lunacy, the legislation says, these expenditures shall not be considered expenditures for the purposes of the city charter. What? I mean, you can't.
What?
You can't
be considered expenses.
Words are not words. I mean,
words are not words.
I mean, that's crazy.
It is amazing how they can manipulate that.
Oh, it's just insane.
So, Wade Luneburg, I mean, you know, for all of your interest in getting the stadium built because of the jobs coming, what about that? What about that issue?
I'll tell you again. I'm not an attorney, and I'm not a charter commission or charter expert either. You know, our issue is not so much Doug's lawsuit, and perhaps it has some merit. I'm not sure, but I'll tell you, we've been working for years on really promoting the idea of having a better facility. Not just for us, but we believe that these kind of public and private partnerships are actually good for people, are actually good for the city of Minneapolis. And
but does Wade, just let me interrupt for just a second. Does that mean that you guys would support it at any public level, like the whole doggone thing, just because there were going to be some jobs created out of it?
No, not necessarily. But again, we believe that over the past few years, at the municipal and at the state level, this is a project that's been heavily vetted, with lots of testimony, lots of research, lots of people demonstrating in support of a project like this, and the numbers bear out that in the future, this is something that's going to be very good for the city of Minneapolis, not just for the city of Minneapolis on in jobs, but also will pay for itself over and over again, just like the current Metrodome facility has. The Metrodome has paid for itself over and over again in the 30 years it's been in service to the city of Minneapolis.
If it's so good for the city of Minneapolis and it's such a good deal, then let the city of Minneapolis vote on it. That's all we're asking. All we're saying is that we have twice changed the city charter to demand the right for the citizens of Minneapolis to vote on the expenditure for a sports stadium. If it's such a good deal, and if everybody is so far behind it, then let the people who are going to have to pay for it, let the people who are going to have to back it up, let them vote on it. And it's not just $270 million or $300 million. The city's share over the life of the bonds, over 30 years, over the life of the bonds, plus the $7.5 million that we have to kick in every year for maintenance and police protection and everything, it comes out to close to $900 million that the citizens of Minneapolis are going to have to pay to support this Viking Stadium. Now, if you think that's such a good deal, then let's let the people of Minneapolis vote on it. That's our right, isn't it?
Well, speaking as a resident of the city of Minneapolis, I also have to say that we elect people to lead and to make hard decisions in our best interest. And if you look at our state legislators, the Speaker Thiessen and Senator Dibble, Hornstein, Dabney, Torres Ray, Loeffler, Hayden, all very, very distinguished, great legislators.
Good progressives too.
And they don't all agree on this issue. But ultimately, there was a vote in the affirmative to move forward with this project. And also at the city, Mayor Ryback and the majority of council members, also Governor Dayton.
It was a pretty slim majority at the council, though, wasn't it? Wasn't it like a 7-6?
7-6.
Yeah, it was a tight vote.
And the council members, the council members who voted in favor of it, at least 3 of them were denied endorsement by their DFL conventions, precisely because they voted for that thing. And those.
Well, they may have been denied endorsement, but I think you'd have a hard time calculating that it was because of that.
Oh, really? You don't think? I mean,
Right.
my guess is that you could talk to a lot of DFLers. Doug, have you talked to anybody in your quest for the mayor's office about who has and who's not been endorsed based on their vote on the stadium? Anybody?
I haven't actually talked to a whole lot of people on this particular issue.
Oh, you haven't? Okay. All
But
right.
you look in the 12th Ward, you look at Sandy Colvin Roy, who's been there for almost 30 years.
Yes, right.
And she was denied endorsement and by an upstart who was anti-stadium. You look at the 10th Ward, Meg Tuthill. She was denied endorsement by Lisa Skelton, who's anti-stadium. You look at
Diane
Hofstede in the 3rd Ward, and she was denied endorsement by Jacob Fry, who's anti-stadium.
Well,
I mean, there's
Andy,
Yes, go ahead, Wade.
I would just suggest that you might be able to make the case that was one of the issues. But let's not forget that Minneapolis is also now addressing a kind of a new universe with ranked choice voting, which if you were to talk to DFLers, party leaders, or if you were to talk to people that are precinct chairs, they'll tell you that ranked choice voting has totally changed the field and perhaps what a DFL endorsement even means.
Well, you may be absolutely right about that. I mean, there's no question. We're going to be talking about that very issue next week, as a matter of fact.
And so in the 12th and in the 10th,
Yeah.
and in a number of the other wards, we weren't talking about 1, 2, or 3 folks looking at the endorsement. We were talking about 4, 5, and 6 people seeking endorsement that day. And quite honestly, some of them walking, being perfectly happy they didn't get the endorsement because it actually just moves their program down the path. So I really don't want to get in the weeds on about some of those kind of issues when I think we can talk about a good project going forward that I think is really going to benefit the city of Minneapolis.
Well, you make a good point. I mean, there are a number of things that have changed in the political climate around Minneapolis that would lend itself. Certainly, RCV must have contributed to the number of people who filed for mayor here. The fact that they're all going to be on the general election ballot, which is a little scary to me. I keep wondering if there isn't a way of applying RCV in better ways than allowing 35 candidates to go forward to a full general election. But we'll talk about.
We're not going to know who wins. We're not going to know who wins the first night. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, that's especially true. But it's going to be interesting since they only have to make 3 counts. No, we're not going to know election night, but we'll know fairly quickly because they are limited. This is going to be a very interesting discussion next week with Gene Massey of Fair Vote Minnesota and some other people. So I'd like to get other people involved. Do you want to come back in?
No,
but excuse me, people. I have a cold.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think Wade, the whole thing comes down to whether or not you believe that if we don't do this, if we don't give Wilf billions of dollars, and my argument is that the city of Minneapolis is going to end up giving him more than $900 million on its own, and the state is going to end up giving it says it's going to give them $400 and some million, but that's going to, because of the interest on the bonds and everything, it's going to end up being close to $1 billion as well. We're going to give this New Jersey
Real estate
questionably
developers.
practicing real estate mogul a couple of $1 billion, because otherwise he would take the Vikings and go someplace else? What? I mean, that is that what he's saying? I mean, that's crazy. I mean, he's not going anywhere, and
there is nowhere for him to go right now.
Really, there's no place for him to go. And if he did leave, there's lots of other teams that would love to come in here, that would love to play in the state, in this market.
This is a big market here.
Yeah, Detroit just lost $3.5 million last year with their Lions. So they would love to have. The Lions would love to roar into the Viking Dome. As old as it is.
I lived in Detroit for 10 years. I mean, I can't imagine the blue and maize right here. Okay.
Well, we'd have Thanksgiving anyway. You know?
I'll tell you what. Let's take a quick break. If you've just joined us, and we're really kind of having fun here. We're talking with mayoral candidate Doug Mann, suing the city over bypassing a charter-required referendum vote on city financing of the Viking Stadium. We have also a former city council member and the publisher of the Southwest Pride newspaper. No, it is Southside Pride newspaper. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And former publisher of All Pulse, but he's a real icon of Minneapolis himself. It's Ed Felien. And we have Wade Luneburg, also a member of the Stadium Implementation Committee, but he also represents Unite Here Local 17. He's Secretary-Treasurer of Local 17 here in the city, and that's the Hospitality Union. So this is really it's kind of an interesting conversation, and we have a little ways to go yet. So give us your questions and comments on the need for a city referendum on stadium financing or any other Viking business for that matter. Lord knows there's plenty of it. Call us at 612-341-0980, 612-341-0980, or tweet us at TTT Andy Driscoll, or post comments on Truth to Tell's Facebook page. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Right now, back to our conversation about the Viking Stadium suit and the controversy. Actually, there are kind of couple of suits out there. Call us at 612-341-0980, 612-341-0980, or tweet us at TTT Andy Driscoll, or post your comments at our Facebook page at facebook.com/Truth to Tell. And we were leaving our conversation talking a little bit about this Minneapolis suit. But, Doug, as you were talking during the break, you had some clarification on some of these issues around the law. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Doug Mann. This is Doug Mann.
Yeah, the city council voted to approve the special legislation in violation of the city charter. Now,
but did the state violate it by putting in an override? That's what you have to answer, isn't it?
Well, I cannot see an override from the state. The state did not repeal the local law. That's what they have the authority to do. They don't have the authority to override. They don't have the authority to direct the city to violate the law.
To violate its own law, in a way. That's the home rule part of the charter thing. If you have a home rule charter, theoretically, you cannot override that without a judge saying, no, you can't do it, it's unconstitutional or something like that.
Well, that could have been challenged and probably would have been challenged if the legislature had attempted to do that. So they tried to do this circumvention. Now that circumvention with the financing mechanism is a little dodgy, and they can't rely on it entirely, so they had a fallback position, and that is to say, and this is interesting, I took notes at the August 20 hearing where where the judge was hearing oral arguments from me and the city attorney, and the city attorney asserted that the city council overrode the charter, not the legislature.
Really?
The legislature
Oh, that's right. The legislature enables the city council to do that.
they gave them permission to
override their own charter.
That's your argument.
But they can't do that. They can't. They cannot do that.
Well, one would think they cannot do that, but this is probably exactly what you're arguing. But
no, but there's a state law that there's. Doug pointed this out in his lawsuit that there's a state law that says cities. When the state has special legislation that affects one jurisdiction, that jurisdiction then has the right to vote on that legislation in the way in which that jurisdiction determines it should vote on it. Now, that determination is made by its charter. And the
legislature can't override that?
The legislature can dismiss the charter. Legislature can grants the charter of the city of Minneapolis. It can take the charter away. But it did not take the charter away. It did not change the charter. It said, you can vote on this, and you vote on it and approve it. And according to the state constitution, it has to be approved in the manner in which the voters of that jurisdiction have determined. And that is, in the case of a stadium, that we get to vote on it. We, the citizens of Minneapolis, get to vote.
Doug Mann.
The point Ed's making is correct. The Minnesota Constitution, it's Article 12, Section 2, gives the authority to the local governments as expressed, by the voters in a referendum or by the governing council. They have the authority to approve special legislation, and there is, and the city charter is the constitution of the city.
That's right.
It's obligatory.
Oh, it is indeed. I was on the charter commission in St. Paul. So
It's obligatory for the city council to refer it to the voters in a referendum, and
Well, and referenda are, to some extent, referenda around the city charter is really, it's both expansive and limited. So Wade Luneburg, now you were let's clear up your actual role. You're not on the current stadium authority, right?
Oh, that's correct. I am not part of the Metropolitan Sports Facility Authority. I am not one of those commissioners.
Okay, so the Stadium Implementation Committee, I think it was called the People's Implementation Committee. Is that right?
I don't know.
It's the Stadium Implementation Committee was called for by legislation to be basically a blue ribbon panel or a select group of Minneapolis residents and interested parties that would work on land use issues and design issues regarding the new facility.
Okay, so that's sunsetted, right?
The design aspect, that part of the committee has actually finished its work. The land use group is going to potentially stick around and meet quarterly from now and probably for the next year, largely because of the great opportunity we have with the Ryan development next to the new facility, some of which is intricately involved with the stadium just because of its proximity.
That's the stuff that's going on the Star Tribune on the Star Tribune land, right?
Yeah.
Right. A great fully financed, privately financed project, $400 million that potentially will have 5,000 workers and 1,200 residents at a mixed-use development right next to the new facility because the new facility is going to be there.
Yes, so it's a little like light rail economic development because it's there. You will see economic development going in. Okay,
Yep.
but these questions must have come about the vote that's required by the charter. They must have come before your implementation committee back then. Did they not?
Well, no, actually they didn't, because the implementation committee, as I said, was there to do two things: assess and assist with design decisions for the new facility, and
Yeah.
also to work on land use issues and commute. So land use issues in what is the MSFA's stadium property, and then expanding the circle to talk about transportation and development issues and neighborhood issues around the facility,
Yeah.
and what the future is going to look like there in the next 20 and 30 years.
I see. So you were just sort of preparing the way in terms of making recommendations. You're an advisory group, of course. You didn't really have authority. Is that right?
It's true. An advisory group is a good description.
And an advisory group like that, I mean, it had everybody from Wade Luneburg to people, even writers.
Neighborhood leaders from, for instance, Elliott Park.
Yeah.
One example.
Well, as they should be,
downtown.
right?
Oh yes, absolutely. And talk to folks in Elliott Park.
Russ Adams
and,
of the Alliance for Metropolitan Stability was on that committee, and so was
Right.
the writer, the woman who wrote wrote for the Star Tribune. This is just amazing. Sometimes these names get okay. Anyway, but what I was trying to get at here is that this discussion about the city vote never came before you, is all, right?
No, that's correct.
All right. So, okay. So you are, in a way, you could not make even a comment about it because it was never brought before you as an implementation committee member.
It was not part of the purview of that group.
I get it. Okay. So what you're here to do is give us a more united here's position on the stadium itself and why it's a good thing.
Yeah, I'd love to. Because we do. We think that public and private partnerships like this new facility are a real opportunity to help move the city forward. It's not just about creating more jobs, but we think that they're good for the community, largely because these new jobs will come from the neighborhoods in Minneapolis. Some of the neighborhoods that are most challenged. We can just reflect back on Target Field, and some may still scratch their head about Target Field, and that was giving money to the poll ads, and while that wasn't the city of Minneapolis, I guess it was Hennepin County, and so if we look back at that, Target
Well, it was
Field
mostly Hennepin County. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's where the money was coming from, is Hennepin County. That's right. Okay.
That's right. But again, a public and private partnership. And when it comes to workforce issues, and that's our wheelhouse. We've seen the workforce, at least for our members, has doubled. And so now we have 700 people on the field on game day, 80 games a season, and because of that increase in the workforce, at a key time in a really delicate economy, when that field opened, we were able to draw organically from neighborhoods around downtown Minneapolis. We believe that these jobs can be good jobs moving forward, and that they should be local jobs. You don't necessarily want somebody driving in from Lakeville to work at Target Field when you have people that are living in really challenged environments and need to re-enter the workforce from a neighborhood north of downtown or south of downtown.
Yeah, Wade, I think everybody's in favor of creating more jobs for inner city people.
This is Ed Felien.
Sure, I mean that's certainly something we're all in favor of. But jobs for the football stadium, the baseball stadium is 80 games a year. the football
That's right.
stadium. The football stadium's 8 games a year. That's a big difference. And there has never been any ancillary development from a stadium. I mean, you plunk a stadium down anywhere in the country, and it creates a desert.
Well, Ryan does say that they're going to build there, though, Ed. Are you saying that they will not?
I would love to see it. I would love to see it, and it would be the first time ever. It would be a miracle, and I would love very much to see that.
Art Rolnick, who used to be with the Federal Reserve and is a very big critic of publicly financed stadiums around the country, because he doesn't see it as an economic development tool, but as a kind of like a dead end expenditure on the part of the public trough.
Absolutely.
But that.
Well, yeah, and if I could,
Wade.
This new facility.
Yes.
And Ed, if you'll forgive me, Ed says we're going to plunk this facility down and it becomes a desert. Before the old facility is even being torn down, there is what appears to be an incredible project worth $400 million that will house 5,000 good jobs and housing for 1,200 people, all to today's density ratios, including transportation, green space. And that's before the old facility is even torn down. So I think it's fair to say that there is potential here with the new facility.
It is true.
And while I understand that there are 80 games a season at Target Field, there are 200 events a year at the current facility, and we're hoping for even more events at the new facility. And so I just want to take some time and talk about the service sector economy here in the Twin Cities.
Go ahead.
And how important it is. And particularly in the city of Minneapolis. You know, there are 25,000 hospitality workers in the city of Minneapolis. That's a payroll of $850 million a year. Now, that's important to our economy. The hospitality industry is Minneapolis' second largest industry. And we are competing every day and every year. We're competing with Denver, Indianapolis, and St. Louis for more and more business, for convention business, for entertainment business, and Minnesota is under snow 6 months a year. Those other cities aren't. And so we have to find ways to stay competitive and to actually grow the industry, because in our business, we believe that service sector jobs should and can be good jobs. They can be good living wage jobs. They should have health benefits and perhaps retirement benefits. And they should be the kind of jobs that people can go to for 8 hours a day and go home and take care of their kids.
Yeah.
What about removing class distinctions in the city based on those jobs, Wade? Are there does this reach around and embrace the great diversity that has become Minneapolis over the last several years?
Yes, and I think it's fair to say, Target. If you look at Target Field, when that new facility was built, the economy, we were just starting to come out of that economic downturn. I mean, just coming out of it. And again, there were people that needed to re-enter the workforce. There were some folks that perhaps had not even really ever meaningfully been employed. And because of that opportunity with Target Field, I can tell you that we have 700 workers on the field at game day at Target Field. I can tell you that 50% of those workers, our members, are residents of Minneapolis, and a full 25% of those residents come from two of the most challenged neighborhoods and zip codes in the north side, and two of the most challenged neighborhoods and zip codes on the south side.
So we do have people from Lakeville working here.
Well, I do have some members from Lakeville, and I fully represent them as well. But what I'm trying to tell you is that with the new facility, Target Field, when that opened, even without workforce provisions, organically, 25% of those workers came from 4 zip codes in Minneapolis. And I can tell you, they weren't my zip code. They came from like the Phillips area. They came from the north side. And these folks are now in the workforce when they largely had not been able to find work before.
Right. Well, Wade, nobody's arguing with that, and we're all in favor of that. And what we're saying, those of us who just simply want to vote, let the people of Minneapolis
Yes,
vote
and I
on
think
this.
we want to be sure that we understand the division in the arguments here. Wade is looking at one major aspect, and maybe with all justification, that's his job. He's Secretary Treasurer of Unite
Absolutely.
Here.
He's representing his union.
Yes,
but,
and
if the Viking Stadium stays the way it is, we're not going to lose one job. That's not going to change. You're not going to lose one job. If people want to build, if Ryan Company wants to build apartment buildings and commercial buildings downtown, if we keep the Viking Stadium where it is, it's not going to change that. There isn't any need.
You're talking about it's just keeping the Humphrey Dome right now.
Right.
Is that
if you
right?
keep the Humphrey Dome, you're going to keep the same jobs. You're going to keep the same possibilities for
And Ryan could still
development,
develop
everything,
around there,
and
you mean.
everything. It's not going to change anything. All that's going to change is $1 billion of the city of Minneapolis taxpayers not having to pay, and $1 billion from the state of Minnesota. And
Andy, if I may, this
Wade?
Wade, and Ed keeps talking about putting a new facility down and it creates a desert. I'd suggest that we have a desert there now, and
There are many who would agree with that.
And I think that we have a rare opportunity to create a new facility that will create a lot of new jobs, not just in the operations side, but also I can tell you on the construction side. I know that I think you had my brother from the Minneapolis construction trade was not able to join today.
Yeah, Dan McConnell could not join us. Yes, right.
That's right. And we're talking about 7,500 jobs for 2.5 years with a payroll of $300 million just in the construction. But
that's well and good, and I think there is some understanding that perhaps some public participation in all of this might work out. Doug has been chewing at the, he's been chewing at the bit here, trying to get his piece in here. Doug Mann.
And Andy,
yes,
again,
Wade.
I understand that we have two tracks going here. And I said at the beginning, I'm not an attorney, and apparently none of us are.
Yeah. The only those who pretend, and that's one. I'm one of them. Yeah.
And I respect Doug and what he's trying to accomplish, or the questions he's trying to get answered in this lawsuit. But we have a rare opportunity to leverage a public and private partnership that can really move the city of Minneapolis forward and keep it competitive with cities like St. Louis and Indianapolis.
Well, what if you made your case to the public, the Minneapolis public, about that when a vote was being considered? In other words, if there was going to be a referendum on this, if they could schedule a referendum, there would be hearings and all kinds of public meetings and neighborhood meetings around whether or not this $10 million or this expenditure that Minneapolis is proposing, that there would be plenty of opportunity for Unite Here and all kinds of other unions, the trades, to get out there and convince the public to vote in favor of this expenditure. This would be simply following the charter and actually saying, okay, the public is right. They have an opportunity to vote on this because it's over $10 million. Okay, so now make the case. Make your case in the public and talk about those jobs, and it may well pass. Yeah. Here, Doug Mann.
Yeah. You made a point about Wade about the most challenged people being helped by these stadiums. Minneapolis has unemployment rate right now officially of less than 5%, and yet on the near north side, it's something like 28%.
Oh, easily almost 30%.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and the thing is you've got politicians who are pushing these big projects that will supposedly trickle down and help the poor people. But the thing is that they're not taking steps that would reduce these disparities that are going on, such as by putting money.
I can tell you, particularly with this project, you're wrong.
No, could I finish my statement?
Let him finish, Wade, please.
I've been advocating putting millions of dollars into enforcement of fair housing and employment laws that would result in far more African Americans and other people of color getting into the workforce, because they're locked out right now because of covert discrimination. Studies have showed that probably 75% of the employment market is off limits to them because of covert discrimination.
Quite true. All right.
And so, we could
even inside the unions. Thank you very much.
And so, I think that's we need to do that. And this kind of reverse Robin Hood routine that Rybeck and the majority of the city council are doing is not going to somehow trickle down these benefits and change things dramatically.
Andy, if I
Wade,
could,
one more comment, then we have to leave it. Go ahead.
I just want to say that, particularly with this project moving forward, it is such a huge project in Minneapolis that if you're acquainted with Lewis King and the Summit Academy,
yes,
they're actually ramping up programs with the building trades to address these concerns. And in fact, the workforce goals of including minorities in the construction and in the operations are all not just hitting Minneapolis economic development goals, but going beyond that in the construction.
Wade,
Wade,
let me just, I want to interrupt you for just a second. First of all, there's a whole hour that you're opening up here for discussion because Lewis King has not been very happy with the previous expenditure of dollars that were promised to the Summit Academy constituencies for improving minority hiring at all. So that all the promises made by the legislature were not fulfilled under previous those promises. So I appreciate what you're saying because you're taking the right tack. That's the way it should go. But there's a lot of difficulty there in promises made and followed through.
Absolutely.
Including President Obama's belief that we shouldn't go into other countries like Syria. Anyway, we have to leave it there, and I'm sorry to have to cut this off, but thanks to all three of you guys for joining us today.
Thank you, Andy.
Especially for agreeing to come in on Labor Day, which of course it's a very appropriate, right? Right, Wade?
yes, it is.
Wade Luneburg is a Ryback-appointed member, of the Stadium Implementation Committee in Minneapolis, and he's Secretary-Treasurer of Unite Here, Local 17, a hospitality workers union here in the Twin Cities, and I must say you comported yourself extremely well out there. He joined us by phone somewhere out there in Green Country. Wade, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and Doug Mann is the mayoral candidate suing the city right now, awaiting a judge's decision in the case. Doug, thanks very much.
Thank you.
We'll get you. We'll see if we can get a little mayoral group going here, especially along these candidates with single issues that you guys have seemed to get together and gone for these.
I'm a multiple.
You're a multiple issue. Okay, all right. And Ed Felien is the publisher-editor of Southside Pride, very much involved in, I think, the resurgent Farmer-Labor Association, right?
Yes, the Farmer-Labor Association has taken a very strong stand in favor of Doug Mann's suit and has formed Citizens for a Stadium vote.
And gave Doug Mann the highest rating.
Doug Mann got the highest rating of any candidate in our
That's hard to sift through, too. Well, Ed Felien, thank you very much for joining us.
Andy.
Really.
Thank you very much.
And he took David Tilson's place, and once again, we have to say we're very, very sorry that his father has died, but his father was suffering, and so another era is passing with the death of Ken Tilson, the great Ken Tilson. So we hope to talk with David Tilson another time. he's always full of things to talk about, isn't he? And one wonders if ever the people's voices will actually be heard. All the laws and constitutional requirements notwithstanding, it really appears that it will never suit the powers to concede power to the voters. And we wonder why almost nobody shows up for city elections these days. Once more next week, more about Minneapolis and how ranked choice voting will work in a field of 35 mayoral candidates. Don't miss it. Truth to Tell is a co-production of Civic Media Minnesota and KFAI. Links to audio and video archives of this and past shows are up on CTT's own website, truthtotell.org, as well as at kfai.org. Well, I want to thank our crew today, Mark Kerner and videographer Craig Stellmacher. And Mark Kerner was also our production assistant today. We thank him for his extra work. Michelle returns next week. I'm Andy Driscoll. We'll see you then. As always, please do take care of each other.